Welcome to Stage 6 Grammar. We're going to learn about two new verb tenses, the imperfect and perfect. Now, you probably noticed that so far, every single verb that you've seen in your sentences and in your book and all your stories, they've all been written in the present tense, meaning they're happening right now. That word tense, by the way, comes from the Latin word tempus, meaning time, as in tempus fugit, time flies. And when you think about it, a verb's tense is simply when the action is taking place. Okay, now in stage 6, though, we're going to complicate things. You're going to see verbs that are not in the present tense. So if you look at the sentences at the very beginning of stage 6, and we'll cover those in class, you see sentences like this. Servi perduiam ambulabant. The slaves were walking down the street. And then a sentence like this. Pestis clamavit cocuus. Pest, the cook shouted. Now think about it. Present tense, you're used to seeing ambulant. But this has a BA added in. And then this verb clamavit in the present tense you know as clamat, but then all of a sudden, bam, you've got a VI added in. So, first thing you need to know is that while these new verb tenses that we're learning express action that happened in the past, there is no one past tense in Latin. And in fact, there's no such thing as the past tense in English either. It's a lot more complicated than that. So action in the past is shared both in English and Latin between a few verb tenses, and the two that we're going to focus on again are the imperfect and perfect. Let's take a look at the imperfect tense first, and let's talk about what does it do. Well, it describes continuous action in the past, and it's always translated as was verbing or were verbing. Occasionally you can translate it as used to verb, but most often it will be was or were verbing. For example, in English, I was walking down the street yesterday. They were selling hot dogs at the stadium. Those are examples of imperfect, continuous action. It happened in the past, but there's continuous action that is implied. So now that we know what it looks like in English and how it's defined, what does it look like in Latin? Well, they're easy to recognize because they always have the letters B-A, ba, right towards the end of the verb. Here are the actual endings that will go at the end of a verb in Latin to indicate that the tense of the verb is imperfect. So it's bam, bas, bat, bamus, batis, and bant. And again, translated as was or were verbing. So if we look at that verb ambulat, meaning to walk, or literally he or she is walking, and we wanted to change it to the imperfect tense, this is what it would look like. So ambulabam, I was walking, ambulabas, you were walking, ambulabat, he, she, it was walking, etc. Some other example sentences that you're going to see in your stories. Pompeiani vinum bibebant. The Pompeians were drinking wine. Metella in atrio sedebat. Metella was sitting in the atrium. Now, I'll teach you the song in class. We have to also talk about our linking verb, because our linking verb, the sum es est, sumus est sunt verb, actually has imperfect forms as well. For example, if you wanted to say, I was tired, you wouldn't use sum, because sum means I am. Instead, here are the imperfect tense forms of our linking verb. Eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratus, erant. And there you can see all of the meanings. All right? Looking at a few examples using eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratis, or erant, we have these sentences. Caecilius erat laetus. Caecilius was happy. Serdvi erant feci. The slaves were tired. Discipulus eram. I was a student. So it implies past action, and there you go. So that's the imperfect tense, and as I said, I'll teach you a song, and of course we'll practice with those endings. Now moving on to the perfect tense. Instead of describing continuous action in the past, it describes completed action in the past. It happened, it's done. It's translated as verbed, or did verb, or has or have verb. For example, I walked to my car. She hurried inside due to the rain. The cat chased the mouse. Once and done. So, now that you know what the perfect tense is and how it's translated, what do the forms in Latin look like? Well, it's a little bit harder to recognize, but there's two tricks. Here's trick number one. 90% of the time, toward the end of the verb, A mysterious V, S, U, or X will just show up out of nowhere. And I say V sucks for short. If you see one of those V, S's, U's, or X's, that's going to tell you that the verb is in the perfect tense. For example, ambulat, meaning walks, becomes ambulawit, V added in, if it's walkada. Plowdit, which means claps, becomes plowsit in the perfect tense, clapada. So again, you got a V, random S, sometimes a U or an X that will show up. In addition to the V sucks rule, right after the VS, U, or X, we have the actual perfect tense endings in Latin, and they are here's how they're pronounced: isti, it, imus, istis, erunt. And you can see the way that they are translated there. Again, if we take our verb ambulat, meaning walks, and we make it into the perfect tense, look, we've added in a V, and then we had in our endings, ambulawi would be I walkada, ambulawisti, you walkada, ambulawit, he, she, it, walkada, etc. Here's some other example sentences. Clemens ad pugnam festinavit. Clemens hurried to the fight. Pompeiani agricolam fortem laudaverunt. The Pompeians praised, the V there, plus the erunt, praised the strong or brave farmer. All right, now I have a song for those as well, and I will teach it to you when I see you. Now let's go back to our pesky linking verb, the sum es est, sumus estis sunt verb. Well, it also has perfect tense forms, and here they are. It's essentially the same endings that you just saw, isti, it, imus, istis, erunt, except that there's an fu put in front of them, and then it's pronounced fui, fuisti, fuit, fuemus, fuistis, fuerunt. Try saying that really fast. Notice, though, that the translation is pretty much identical if we were translating the imperfect tense forms of those as well. So if you saw eram, that means I was. If you saw fui, that also means I was. Now, just one more thing. You have seen a couple in stages 5 and 6 of what are called compound verbs. For example, ad est, that's from stage 5. It means is here. It's a compound of ad, meaning to or toward, and est, meaning is. And now in stage 6, you have ab est, is absent or is not here. And that's a compound of ab, which means away from, plus est, meaning is. Now, the est part, because that's our linking verb, if we want to make ad est or ab est into the imperfect tense or the perfect tense, then we're going to use those imperfect and perfect tense of that linking verb. So, for example, if look at this one, ab errant would be they, nt, were errant, they were absent. Ad eras, s meaning you were here. And we'll practice more with that. So quick summary, imperfect tense for regular verbs, always see the ba, and it's always translated was, verbing, or used to verb. Perfect tense, you'll see the vs, u, or x, plus those other endings, which we'll sing a song and learn more thoroughly, and it's translated as verbed, or did verb, or has, or have verbed. All right, that's it.